Good afternoon. Good. I'm absolutely thrilled to be moderating this panel today, and it's truly an honor to be joined by these incredible speakers like Emily and Saif. So together we'll explore the critical role of quantum science and technology in shaping the future. And most importantly, how we can take part in developing a robust, diverse, and also skilled quantum workforce. Without further ado, I'm going to turn it back to my esteemed panelists to introduce themselves, starting with Emily Edwards. Go ahead.
Is this on? Is this, okay.
Yes,
it's hard to tell up here if it's on because the speakers. Yeah, okay, great. I see lots of thumbs up. It's so great to be here and in this convenings. I really appreciate the organizers for the work that they did in putting this together. Admittedly, I am not a mathematician, so I'll start with maybe my background. So I am a physicist by training. I went to the University of Maryland and did atomic physics, experimental atomic physics, and with neutral atoms. And then I did a postdoc in trapped ions across the hallway. So, the first thing is neutral atoms and trapped ions are different enough to me that I could do a postdoc and still learn a lot more. This was quite some time ago. Let's see, I finished my postdoc in 2011, and so it was right at this inflection point when I feel like a lot of the sort of organized industrial and government investments around the world started happening. And so it's really was an exciting time to sort of be a PhD student and then a postdoc in the days as this sort of field was sort of transitioning from being purely physics to being very cross-disciplinary. Also to see the emergence of so many jobs and discussions about it. So when I graduated, then it was right during the economic downturn, and so that was right during the time where actually atomic physics PhDs went from doing 2 years of a postdoc to 3 to 4 years as a postdoc because there weren't a lot of jobs actually in industry or anything else. And if you didn't go into academia, you often were, you either worked for a laser company or did a lot of consulting. And so things have changed a lot, right? Now we're talking about all the needs and how people are just being sucked into this industry and government jobs, and it's wonderful to see. So then I pivoted to doing science communication. So I'm very interested in how we talk about this field, and I spent about 9 years as the Director of Communications and Outreach for the Joint Quantum Institute at the University of Maryland, where I learned to be a science writer, do visualization, and just about every other way we could talk about this. And I was given a lot of freedom to hire a team and be able to think through how we talk about this field. After that, I took a position at the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign, that's actually where I live, is in Urbana, and to help stand up their quantum center. So I directed their quantum center. I was first their managing director, and then I was their executive director, and I did that for a couple years, and I recently joined Duke University as a associate research faculty in the Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering. And so what I wanted to say is, he told me to go in depth, so that's, so now I feel like I'm just, so what I want to say is that, it used to be that we talked a lot about quantum in terms of the research results, but now it's got a very broad context. And I've had the privilege to work both in the, I'm a science communicator in my heart of hearts, part of the field, but also more recently I've been involved in helping lead a national effort around quantum education, the National Q12 Education Partnership, which was set up by OSTP and NSF, and so it's backed by a grant from NSF, and also it's supported now by the Laboratory for Physical Sciences Qubit Collaboratory. And so that is an industry, government, professional society, academia consortium, and it's an unwieldy beast. It is not like the QEDC in that it is not set up as a mandated by federal law, but it has, in my opinion, this community through the Q12 has worked hard to increase the visibility of the problems of the quantum workforce and the really inequalities that are there and what the role of different sectors can be to try to move the needle on these on the issues that I think a lot of people here are interested in. Okay. And so I'm going to end. And so that's really where I sit now. Is I lead this national consortium, and then I do a lot of informal educational stuff. And so I'm looking forward to this discussion on what the different roles are of the different groups and how we can kind of work through our different disciplines to improve the situation in quantum education.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much for that. Saif, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Bashir, for the introduction. Thank you, Emily. Hi, everyone. My name is Saif Rayyan. I'm quantum. It's quantum safe to say safe. That's my line. I'm a people's manager of quantum computing algorithms research at IBM. And I think it's one of the most fun jobs in the world. I'm part of a larger team that sits at the core in between science and technology, trying to think of algorithms and methods that you can apply on the current devices that we build. You can use to build capabilities to enable research and experimentation and demonstration, and also think about what is it that we are going to apply and implement on future devices. And it's very exciting now that we have early fault tolerance kind of in the next 3 to 5 years. I work with people that think about complexity theory and way on the theoretical side and learning theory, people who try to learn quantum chemistry so that they can run a demonstration. They're forced to work with the experimentalists to think about how to run things on the devices and actually write code that will enable scaling up. How do you run these things on the devices? It's so much fun to kind of see that interdisciplinary interaction kind of happening at the core of building the technology and the future of the technology. And I love this conference because I feel I've felt kind of something similar here. Yeah. I think it takes thinking about like skills for workforce development, being able to be comfortable in this situation where you can all talk together, try to kind of come together to speak the same language. I think it's one of the key issues to drive the field forward. Okay. I'm a people's manager, and part of my job is really kind of figuring out how do I support my team in order to do their job. Half of my team is young researchers within maybe 2 to 4 years of graduating their PhD programs. So many of them have never had a job before outside academia. Okay. Kind of navigating, the hype around quantum computing, trying to figure out how to work in a big organization, big corporate organization, understanding the strategy. These are all things that I play a big role in, at the same time kind of setting up, thinking about research goals and partnerships. I think what's exciting about our team is because we still have the science part, we do a lot of open science. And this is kind of a similar theme that you've seen in the previous panel, where we do collaborations with universities, industries, and national labs. Okay. This is one hat that I have on. My other hat is kind of the education workforce development. Before joining IBM, I've only worked at IBM for 2 years. Before that, I actually worked at MIT for a long time in digital learning. My background is in physics. I did a postdoc in physics education research at the Center for Altered Code Atoms at MIT. So I've always been around people that did education and research and development. And I think what's interesting is that I worked on digital learning and massive open online courses, and I see a lot of similarities around the people's and technology and funding problems that we're, maybe at a larger scale in quantum computing. But this is one of my interests is kind of trying to figure out how can we really kind of think seriously about building the workforce in order to scale up. I think that what's interesting is that technology is moving very fast. And I'm interested in kind of that research, collaborative interdisciplinary research culture. How can we scale that up to kind of build a pipeline of workforce development that's connected to quantum quantum science. My email, by the way, I'm going to mention a lot of things. Please email me if you want any links to any of the resources. It's my first name, Saif, my last name, Ryan, at ibm.com. I'd love to hear from all of you.
Okay. Thank you very much for that detailed introduction. So just to give you some context, so our goal today on this panel is not just to spark conversations, but to ignite actionable insights that will strengthen quantum education and build a diverse, well-equipped quantum workforce. So, Emily, I'm going to start with you. I know you've led the NSF-funded Q2 Work Initiative, and also which helps prepare competitive quantum information science workforce. And I also know, as part of the National Q12 Education Partnership, you played a key role in bringing quantum education into classrooms and learning environments. So, my question is on early engagement and pathways. At what stage of education should we introduce students to quantum science concepts? And what would an effective K-12 pipeline look like?
Yeah, this is a really great question. And maybe before I say that, I just want to add on to what you said about today. I think I just want to say, like, I've seen all the Post-its, which I think are really awesome about actions. So I wanted to just add on, if it's okay, that I think it's really important that, whenever this discussion takes place and as you walk away from this, as you think about actions that you're recommending from this meeting, I think it's really important to put it in the context, to the best of your ability, in the role of each sector. Government, what can government do? What can industry do? What should academia be doing? What should early education be doing? And also think about, and to that end, think about the difference between education and training and what we mean by those words, because that informs the actions that can take place. So in that context, I want to talk about what you just brought up. So there are programs currently researching ways we can bring quantum in a formal classroom and develop quantum activities for elementary students. And so, do I think that that's where the pipeline starts? I think it starts anywhere that students exposed to science at whatever age, okay? But I think that I want to highlight that at minimum, I think that we need to start formally thinking about middle school. And I think we need to, as research comes out about earlier age groups and how they learn abstract topics in this discipline, consider ways to get into elementary school. Now, this is a big ask. I don't think we're talking about teaching entanglement to 5-year-olds outside of my good colleague Chris Ferry's Quantum for Babies books, which I receive no money by saying those words. I want to say that I think that there's, we underestimate the way that young learners can approach these topics. And I think that the excitement around quantum education is an opportunity to use it as a lever to excite students, to support teachers in becoming, science role models and improving their way to be science role models themselves at these earlier stages, and help students begin to see themselves in it. Because research shows that students, particularly in the US, young girls, students of color, self-select out of the disciplines that drive QISE at middle school. So if we don't even start there or consider that early stage, then we lose the opportunity to achieve our vision of a diverse quantum workforce. But this takes decades to do. So, we try to, with Q12, think about how to build up this pipeline by removing barriers, particularly as it relates to infrastructure. So, while it's funded by the NSF, and I will say that nothing I say represents the government, I will say that one of the barriers are policies and supporting teachers. And so that's really what we think about at those stages, is how do we help teachers bring this to their students. And in math specifically, that involves concepts like probability. So that was taught in 6th grade. So, how do we use quantum as a vehicle to teach probability? Measurement. How do we use quantum concepts as a vehicle to improve our students' understanding of measurement, uncertainty, what things are inherently uncertain based on nature and what things are not? Maybe I'll stop there and let it.
Yeah, so I have a separate question for Saif. So by the way, I love this video, talking about K-12, I love this video, which Emily led the production, and I suggest you watch it if you've not watched it. I think the title is What You Can Do with Quantum Science featuring astronaut Josh, right, all the way from ISS, International Space Station, and also Levar Burton, who is, I think, an American actor. That was really a great video, and I told my 9-year-old, I sent it to my 9-year-old son, and he watched it, and he said, yes, Dad, I want to do quantum. So, Saif, my question is to you. I know you're a manager. I know you're a manager of quantum algorithm research at IBM, and you're focused on identifying educational and research needs for computational scientists. So, my question is, what extracurricular or co-curricular activity, e.g., hackathon, workshops, internships, can inspire and prepare students for a career in quantum science?
I think it's such an exciting time because it doesn't matter what your background, what your field is, at what stage of your learning, there are pathways to get into learning about quantum computing. And IBM is one of the companies that contribute to providing some of these resources. Okay. Been heavily invested in tools for doing research, but also for teaching and learning. I mean, Qiskit has become really an important tool, and we build a lot of activities around the Qiskit platform that go from, we have the learning platform now that has courses on quantum computational science. They have tutorials that address certain different concepts in quantum information science, but also the goal ultimately is kind of how do you get your hands dirty and try something on the machine, ultimately try some code and run things on the machine. And towards this, it's not just that the resources are important, it's kind of building these communities and having activities that will align with certain communities. So for example, IBM have been doing a summer school. I think this is something traditional for graduate schools. IBM does it a little bit differently where each year there's a focus on a different topic. This last year it was about running utility scale experiments. The summer school is virtual. You'll get the lectures recorded. You can actually watch the lectures on YouTube for the past few years. But what's important is kind of these tutorials, these exercises, these challenges that you can actually try something and see if you can find a problem that you're interested in. IBM also runs Qiskit challenges. This runs yearly where you get to kind of test out some of the hot tools that are coming from the development team. So that's also a great opportunity to kind of come in and get a taste and kind of get a window into solving a lot of the problems that are introduced are things that you hear about in this workshop, but they're introduced at a lower level. So it's a good gateway, you know, depending on where you come from, it's designed for people that have experience in any science, in any computational science, kind of to come in and think about using quantum computing. I also wanted to touch a little bit on internships because as a manager, I hire a lot of interns. And I see that there is a little bit of it. Ruslan also mentioned that JP Morgan Chase are hiring a lot of interns. And I think a lot of companies, national labs, they have internship programs. At IBM, even over the last 2 years, I see that these internship programs are starting to shift and to become a little bit more focused. At the beginning, we only hired kind of 3 pools, hardware, software, and theory or algorithms. Now we're actually coming up with kind of more targeted internships, and some of them are a little bit more applied. So now if you go and our internship ads are actually up out there, you'll find an internship position as a quantum computational scientist. So now we're looking more for people that are willing to think about applying some of the methods that are coming out of from the field into different disciplines. So you might work with in a problem in healthcare or life sciences. You might work on a problem in finance. Kind of we'll find places where we work in certain areas with partners and kind of plug it in. So I encourage you and encourage your students to kind of explore kind of some of these roles and open your mind because I think the field is going to change very quickly, and we're all trying to figure out what these roles should be. But every time there's a new role, I think it's a great opportunity for someone to kind of get into the field and gain some practical experience.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. And talking about Qiskit, I think David is going to be leading the the session tomorrow for Qiskit. So I think I have a follow-up question for that, but feel free, Emily, to jump in if you want to, based on his question. So what specific mathematical, and this is on skills development, what specific mathematical and computational skills should be prioritized for the next generation of quantum scientists? Safe.
You want to start?
I can start. So I work with researchers that are trying to push the boundaries on what methods you can use, both kind of from understanding where quantum advantage might come from, but also where can we see quantum advantage? Which problem is going to lead to quantum advantage first? And it's a lot of fun to see people kind of speaking multiple languages. It's the same, similar to the topics that have been presented here today. There's strong understanding of math and linear algebra and complex numbers. People that work on simulation and try to understand quantum chemistry in addition to understanding quantum physics. Theoretical topics like group theory, number theory, graph theory, they're really kind of very important in thinking about some of these problems. And I think I want to kind of highlight something that it's actually, you need a lot of classical computational skills, and I think Marcus in the previous panel kind of highlighted this. To keep computational science kind of field growing, ultimately quantum computers is about finding the problems that quantum computers can solve better than classical computers. So we find ourselves, in order to solve any of these problems, we need to build a collaboration with someone that's strong in classical computational methods. And maybe this kind of leads me to thinking about this at a little bit kind of a step lower in the pipeline. I think we have a problem if we don't lower the entry bar. It's easy for me to kind of expect that I can hire people with PhDs or postdocs to kind of think about these problems. But ultimately, for the whole field to grow, we need to be able to allow for the younger generations, people with lower degrees like undergraduate degrees, to be able to kind of come in and enter. And I think there's the really need for focusing computational thinking at an earlier stage. I mean, in many universities, we still teach classical mechanics for 3 semesters before we even talk about quantum mechanics. And very few curricula till now kind of start with the computational thinking from the foundation. And I think this is important, and I think this is also true for K through 12. Yeah. I would love to see kind of more basic kind of computational thinking curriculum.
Yeah, I mean, I think the challenge with quantum skills questions often is that a lot of the skills that are listed, rightfully so, by our employers are either very, very specific to a particular hardware if they're building something, and so it's something that like maybe they need to be trained on at that employer, or they're very, very broad skills that are needed for success in many STEM disciplines. And so it always begs the question, well, here are the skills. Like, I agree with those, computational thinking, we hear data analysis, we hear, understanding of how to identify a problem and what kind of statistical approach is needed, like things like this, and at least in the math context. And I think it leaves people sort of scratching their head as like, oh, well, then do I develop one course, or do I develop a whole curricula, or do I do a new major, a new department, or at the K-12 level, is it a completely separate thing? How does it fit in? How is it different? And this conversation is really important, because I think the answer is right now we're in kind of a chaotic stage, and many of the things we need to do are going to just take a lot of time, especially as you go earlier in the pipeline. And we need to work with the existing STEM infrastructures at each educational level in order to be successful. So at K-12, it is unlikely that in the US, and that's the only context I can really speak to, it is unlikely that we will have a standalone quantum elective at the widespread, accessible to all students in the US through their public school. That is a highly unlikely thing. Now, would that be very valuable? Probably. Probably. I mean, it's another science course that gives people exposure to a relevant field where there is employment. I mean, that makes it relevant, but is it likely to happen? No. And so at the K-12 level, we look at, okay, how do we take those skills we're hearing from employers way downstream and then translate it into concepts that can be infused into math, computer science, physics, and chemistry courses? And so that's something that Q12 has worked on. At the undergraduate level, the answer is going to be different whether you're a primarily undergraduate institution or whether you're an R1, whether you're an R2, what your employer map might look like, if your employer, if you're a state that most of your students that come out of the public universities stay in state. And so the answers become more complex. But I do think that there are early signs of what we can do in this space. I saw there were a lot of questions about primarily undergraduate institutions. And so maybe we'll get there in this conversation.
Yeah, we'll get there. Yeah, so thanks for that. And so building on the previous response you've just given. So what are the most effective strategies to break down silos between mathematicians, computer scientists, physics, engineering in quantum education? Safe, yeah, safe.
I can take a stab at this. I can't claim that this is just my idea. Actually, earlier on, I think Bert de Jong and De Fang mentioned that even the advice for a theoretical scientist, computer scientist, or physicist, just get your hand dirty and try to apply something on the devices. Yeah. And I think this is aligned with IBM's mission. Like we're going to try to figure out basically how to run what we call utility scale experiments on the devices. Push the boundaries on circuits that we can run, 100 plus qubits. You get to the point where you get results from quantum computations that are beyond what we call brute force classical computation, because in the next few years we want to kind of get into that song and dance between classical methods and quantum methods. And I think it's important to kind of put that context from the beginning, kind of try to think about how to apply the problem. The second advice I also heard from people is force people to talk to each other. Yeah. That works really very well. Bring in experts from multiple fields to work on solving problems. When you build these collaborations effectively, you get a lot of really beautiful work kind of happening. One of the things that IBM does is that we support these what's called technical working groups. We really think that we're providers of quantum computing technology, and ultimately quantum advantage needs to be realized with our partners in academia and in industry. So we created these technical working groups in areas where we want our partners to chart the research and education strategy. One of them is in healthcare and life sciences, one in optimization, high energy particle physics, and one in sustainability, and the last one is in material science and HPC. And four of these it's basically communities where researchers and educators drive in the agenda. There are 4 white papers that I encourage you all to kind of check out if you're interested in these topics, and I'm happy to share some of these. But I think when you bring these communities together to define, I think I'm thinking more of kind of from a research perspective, but also a lot of the time really the graduate students are the ones that are going to pick up kind of some of these threads, and we'll get a lot of experience with it.
Yeah. So I think my next question will be for Emily, and I think this is really very interesting, which has to do with challenges in scaling quantum education. So what are the key challenges in scaling quantum education programs across various institutions? For example, particularly smaller universities like what we call PUI, right? Primarily undergraduate institutions or even community colleges, for example. What are the challenges in scaling quantum education programs across such institutions?
Yeah, so this is a great question. So I think, many of those who are working at primarily undergraduate institutions and definitely at community colleges and at different MSIs, HBCUs, a lot of them, the professors play a different kind of role in terms of being a role model than at a large-scale university where, they have a lot more students, and if they're R1, they have a lot of research dollars. And the professors there often teach, as I think many of you know, your teaching load is very, very, very high, okay? So the expectation that you're teaching 2 and 2 or 3 and 2, or some of these people teach in 4 courses a semester, the expectation that you're going to suddenly have time to now develop a robust research program and be able to also add new courses is like an unrealistic expectation. So I think that what we've seen, and I'll point to the Cal State system specifically because they've kind of gone ahead with some of these potential solutions for is that if you could have one QISE course, that would be great. And so what they're doing is, my colleague Justin Perrone at Cal State San Marcos, Hillary Hurst, who's now not at San Jose State because she's undetailed to NQCO at OSTP, but then she'll be back in 2 years. These guys are working on having online faculty learning communities. I was telling somebody about this earlier. So that the faculty who want to teach this can learn from other faculty what the course could look like, what the syllabus look like, here are some lecture notes, and then adapt it to their own context. So they're not starting from scratch. And then have online learning communities where they meet throughout the year when they can to understand get more confidence, learn the science a little more, kind of take that step forward towards what you would imagine as course development. In some cases, in these smaller institutions, it might not be a full course. It might be a couple of weeks of quantum in one other course. And I will say that depending on the department, it's going to be quite different. Like in physics, where quantum is already part of the curricula, that might be very different. In chemistry, quantum's there. We just call it physical chemistry. It's there. In math, that's going to be different, where there isn't maybe a quantum course at all, but there might be some place to put a couple of weeks. So I think for these smaller institutions, like supporting the development of communities and having federal investment that does that, because this costs money for those institutions, and that money, I would say, can go a long way, but it's much more, I don't know how to say this, but it's way valuable to invest in supporting these huge, primarily undergraduate institutions per dollar compared to a place that already has the infrastructure to offer those courses already and add a whole minor and a whole specialization. And so I would say starting small and looking at these online learning communities. I'm happy to talk more, make connections to the groups that are doing this and to the people here.
That's really
Oh, I'm
interesting.
sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt. I want to say the other challenge we hear is that there's a lot of pressure to develop hands-on laboratories for this topic based on like some limited data on skills that are needed when you go into experimental parts of industry. And I would caution people to question this demand a little bit and think about, again, how to adapt within the current structure you have, because the equipment we're talking about in some cases is so expensive that it's not going to be able to scale. So the answer of the challenge of scale is sometimes I think the demand for uniform scale and uniform laboratory access is unrealistic given the structures we have, which sounds very negative, but I feel like I just want to be realistic and also respect that the professors at these institutions, many of you are here, they teach a lot. They teach a lot, and that is so valuable. And we should be supporting the mission and supporting those people and what they're asking for rather than taking a top-down approach.
Yes, thank you very much for that.
May I follow up on that, because I think this is a very important point. And
Yes.
I think one of the things that we're trying to do at IBM, because we realize that we have a lot of great quantum information scientists, but we're not the ones that are going to create the curriculum. We actually need to work with the faculty, provide the resources that plug into the classroom exactly like you said, without adding too much of an overhead for them to integrate in the classroom. One of the things that we're experimenting with is Qiskit in the classroom, so kind of shorter 1-hour modules that are flexible to kind of be plugged into various classes. And I think it's important for us to have people in various organizations try these out to figure it out, because ultimately we need to build something that would work in flexible situations and become sustainable. The other thing that I wanted to add is kind of maybe the partnerships between maybe R1 universities and undergraduate universities is important. There are some successful examples where sharing of equipment now with if you can imagine kind of online and hybrid programs, you can imagine that you structure a curriculum so that the using the equipment in a specific place is facilitated and supported with initiatives while you can teach your own course for the rest of the year. And of course, like remote technology allows us also to benefit from this a lot. But we have to put more effort into building these partnerships. And I think, from my teaching life, I think one of the issues with teaching is that I remember my advisor kept bringing this over and over again. Every night, tens of thousands of physics teachers basically stay up late preparing exactly the same material. They're all like sitting lonely in their places without getting any help. And it doesn't make any sense because now we're in a connected world. I think it just takes a lot of effort at a higher level between kind of industry and government and universities to build these structures that help with that.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. So we're going to be switching gears to industry partnerships. I know Kurt might have talked about this, but I'm going to be asking it in a slightly different way. So what are the most effective ways for academia, government, and industry to collaborate on workforce development in quantum science and technology? Who want to go for that?
Sure.
Okay, since I lead a consortium, I might say like a few comments on this. So I don't yet know, after 3.5, 4 years, the most effective way to have these groups all work together, contributing equally, and to solve the issues. I will say that I see maybe some points where I think signs of success. So first I will say, like, every industry is not monolithic, government's not monolithic, academia is not monolithic. And so I do sometimes also feel like we hear this government, industry, academia, and we don't know what to do with it. It's a real head scratcher. So what I've tried to do with my industry partners, including IBM, is identify clear actions with metrics that can be reported back that industry, like companies, can do to contribute to workforce development. I'm still working on this. This is a very hard problem because education is so long that everybody worries that they don't want to get into it because it takes too long and it's got so much overhead and they're not sure what to do. And so I think giving clear actions, and the same is actually true of government. You know, I'm funded by government, but sometimes wearing my hat as a faculty member, I get asked about, like, what are the policies, what's the role of the federal government in this activity? And I think coming up with clear asks to the right people is the most effective way to make small steps of progress that then add up over time. So one metric of successful partnership is seeing change in policy. So we now see that education and workforce development are threaded through the entire public draft that hasn't been passed yet, but public draft of the National Quantum Initiative Reauthorization Act. Right? That wasn't there in the first time. There was not as much talk about interdisciplinarity. There wasn't as much talk about workforce development and education. And so one sign of a successful partnership is that from industry, the parts of government that are allowed to ask for policy, from academia, with a very strong voice, legislators heard this and made changes to or proposed changes in new drafts of federal law. So that's one sign of successful partnership. Another sign is when in quantum education, we stop so much being quantum education, but we start being part of STEM education and the STEM education infrastructure nationally. At the K-12 level, I see right now state-level people who have no knowledge of quantum trying to now figure out what are the policies and programs they need to put in place to support their teachers in this discipline, support their students. And I start to see, like, I just got an email today from the National Girls Collaborative, and the people there don't know anything about quantum, but they've been working with the community to develop curricula. So once we get infused into STEM infrastructure, that's a sign of successful partnership. But to get there, it really is like kind of a slog to step by step try to figure out how to work with each organization to find an action that works for them and see if any of those actions, so you don't have to be spinning your wheels, can work for other organizations. And so I'd love the help of the math community to figure out how we can kind of work together so that, that we grow this so that partnerships are happening at more the discipline level and within different communities, and not right now, which has been more of a top-down approach that is really limited by the amount of hours in the day for the people funded on federal grants. So I think that's the next phase that needs to happen.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I can quickly, but did you touch on the challenges of implementing these partnerships?
I mean, the challenge is that you have to have a tailored approach. I mean, if you just say to industry, like, honestly, if you just say, like, everybody contribute X amount of dollars and we'll figure out some programs that work, I actually don't observe that is effective currently. Okay. The other main challenge, and I'll just speak industry specifically, because I think the role of government is quite maybe different, but employers, and not just industry, just employers in general in the private and the nonprofit sector, the turnover of people and the priorities and the strategy of the top of the organization changes a lot. And so what I've seen as a really big challenge is that 1 year company X will be like, yes, we are all in. We are all in on this for the long haul. And then the next year they're like, actually our quarterly reporting or, oh, we've changed, we're now a product company instead of a education company, or whatever it is, Yeah. And this is not to insult the good people and wonderful, hardworking folks with passion in the industry. It's really to say that there is not a one-size-fits-all solution to working with industry.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask my last question, and I'm also going to tell you to use 60 seconds to tell the audience what you want them to go home with. And I think this is on global and strategic investment. What kind of investments and policies should government and funding agencies prioritize to build a sustainable quantum workforce?
I think I'm a big advocate for integrating research, workforce development, and thinking about the whole ecosystem holistically, because I think without that, kind of supporting these initiatives does not work. And kind of that relates back to the previous question around integrating efforts from industry and government. You need to think about it holistically, and you need an aligned structure of incentives for everyone that actually makes sense, so that the system doesn't go kind of into different directions, people still in their silos. I actually also I think that the policies need to rethink the roles of each partner. I think I point to something that Ruslan mentioned kind of last time, is that the whole kind of thinking, the industry thinks that university is the place where you develop a certain technology, and you just take and run with it and you develop it. That doesn't happen anymore. Or like we talk to universities and they basically say, okay, we do a lot of research on industry. Universities also do spin-off startups. What you actually need to think about kind of, aligning the funding and investment so that you leverage the strengths of each partner towards kind of a certain measurable goal, like Emily said.
Yeah, thank you. Do you want to add to that, or?
Yeah,
what is
the?
Yeah, I said, so it was basically on global and strategic investment. What kinds of investment and policies should government and funding agencies prioritize to build a sustainable quantum workforce?
Yeah, so I mean, again, I think this is like a set of discrete steps that hopefully overall move the needle on leveraging quantum to improve STEM education. So I agree with everything Saif said. I do think that I've called for a national center on quantum education. And I think we have to elevate the problem of quantum education and treat it in the same way we treat the very intractable or seemingly difficult problems and timelines of quantum. I think because people have been maybe told that some of the quantum computing stuff will happen next year through some people have overhyped it, then folks have this impression that a little bit, and particularly folks in government, that the market will fix the education problem. But we know from decades of inequalities and lack of achievement in the US on STEM education that that's not the case in any field. And so we need to treat this problem and use quantum as an opportunity to elevate the problem. And so in the policy in the government here is we use centers to do these kinds of things. So we need a national center on STEM education, and we need to continue as a collective community across all sectors to make sure that this is top of mind, even if it is not the top investment in dollars, because that will continue to support and empower teachers and educators across the U.S. to be able to do the things they need to do in their communities to succeed.
Thank you very much. And we don't have time, right?
No time.
Time up? We're over time, okay. So please, a round of applause for this wonderful esteemed